Welcome back to Ready Budget Go. My name is Drew, and around here we talk about household budgeting, saving money, and achieving our financial goals. So if any of those sound like something you're interested in, please consider subscribing, hit the like button, and leave me a comment down below, because I would love to hear from you. This week, I'm going to get back into the Paint by Sticker book, where I am putting down about 50 stickers at $2 a piece and saving $100 toward my big goals. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to talk about my approach to money as a product of my upbringing and my education and my experience. So this is done kind of as I guess sort of a podcast style. You're certainly welcome to watch me struggle with a kindergarten level task on screen, or if that's more than you can bear, then by all means just listen to my words and enjoy it that way. So last week, to recap, I started talking about the Strive method, and I'm going to talk more about that, but I don't think I'm going to get very far into it this week because there's been something ruminating in my mind over the past few weeks, ever since FinCon. And FinCon, for those who don't know, is a financial conference that is held every year. This year it was in Portland, Oregon, and I went to that. If you haven't seen the video that I posted where I gave a recap on FinCon and what I learned, that is on my YouTube channel. I'll try to remember to link it below, but I'm pretty horrible with linking it below. But at any rate, you should be able to find it. It's not that far back if you're watching this on or around the day that it goes live. So one of the talks that I went to at FinCon was by a woman named Kelsa Dickey. And her name is spelled Kelsa, and her last name is Dickey, Dickey. Just in case you want to look her up. She is a financial coach, and I mean, I've said this, I think I said this in the FinCon summary video as well, but listening to her 45-minute talk was worth the price of the whole trip. I mean, I sent her an email afterward telling her how much her words moved me. And just to recap real quick, when she was talking, when she was giving her talk, I could hear the light bulbs going off in the crowd and people going, oh, and ah. And I mean, it was literally like that. So that was, I will say it was life-changing. And I don't use that lightly. So I'm just going to kind of summarize her talk. I gave a more detailed description in the FinCon video, but basically she was talking about working with her clients as a financial coach. And when she first started, she thought that the most important thing, the thing that people needed from her, was knowledge. They didn't know how to manage their money, and so she talked about the 50-30-20 rule. She talked about the rules of thumb for how to save for retirement. She talked about the type of investments that people should be in. She talked about different debt payoff strategies. And what she realized was that a lot of people already knew that on some level. They knew the information, but they didn't know how to apply it. So then she moved on to, okay, there's some kind, so they know it, but they're not doing it. So there's some kind of an emotional barrier. So she changed her approach to, how do you feel about this knowledge? What's stopping you from taking the first step? Or, let's talk about why you're feeling overwhelmed and reassuring them and letting them know that they can do it, trying to build up their confidence. And so she tried that, and her clients went out into the world, and some of them were successful, but most of them were not. And so because she is passionate about her profession and the success of her clients, she thought, okay, so it's something else. And so she started doing research and, also kind of experimenting with her approach, and landed on the Conative method. So we already talked about the cognitive method, which is, you don't understand what you're doing because you don't understand the mechanics of it. So all you need is knowledge. Then there was the emotional approach, which is there's some kind of emotion that is, you have the knowledge, but there's some kind of an emotion that prevents you from doing things. And then there's the conative approach. And the conative approach, or the conative method, means that you have the knowledge, you're not afraid, or there's no emotional barrier, but you still can't seem to do it. And maybe it's because the method that you've been taught isn't right for you. So whatever approach you have doesn't work. And this can be true of anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be finances, but to me, it makes total sense to finances. And I'm going to tell you why. When I was starting to pay off my debt, and I had a ton of it. If you've been listening to these episodes for a while, then I was in deep, deep crap with how much money I owed. And I was completely overwhelmed. And looking for guidance on that, I found, the two methods that are out there that are now popularly known as the snowball method and the avalanche method, right? Snowball method, you line up your balances smallest to largest, and you pay off the smallest first with throwing every spare dollar you can at that, and then you roll that amount into the next, and so on and so on. Avalanche method, similar approach, but you arrange everything by the interest rate, highest to lowest, and do it that way. But neither of those approaches worked for me. And the reason is because the balances were so large that it really didn't matter. When I had a $5,000 credit card and an $8,000 credit card that each were going to take months to pay off, I wasn't really looking at the 1 or 2% difference in interest rate or the $3,000 delta in balance, because both were huge. So for me, it was which one gave me the most anxiety. And it wasn't always the highest balance, and it wasn't always the highest interest rate. So when I started paying off debt, I had doctor bills. And those, to me, were the ones that gave me the most anxiety, because those were the ones that actually called me. I had a 0% interest, and I didn't have a specific time by when those had to be paid off. But they wanted their money. They're professionals. They performed a service for me, and they deserve to get paid. Absolutely. And they would call and call and call. And it wasn't just doctors. It was also my dentist, labs. I mean, I've talked about how much surgery I've had and all of that in previous episodes, so I won't go into it again. But suffice it to say, those were the ones that caused me the most anxiety, that I just wanted rid of. So I got rid of those. And then there was an American Express bill on my corporate account because I had forgotten to pay it. We were responsible for paying our own, and we got reimbursed from the company. Well, the reimbursement came in. I thought I'd submitted the payment, and I hadn't. And then all that money that was in my checking account went to other creditors and what have you. And so then my corporate account fell behind. And I didn't want to get in trouble with my company, so that was my high priority next. So, and that's how I managed it. And it wasn't the avalanche method, and it wasn't the snowball method. It was the anxiety method. I'm sure there's a word for it. I've seen this referenced a couple other places, but we're talking like 10 years ago. And I just kind of went out on my own with it. So that is an example of the conative method. I knew that I needed to pay off debts. I knew that it made the most sense to organize, put them in some kind of order, pay off the highest priority first, and then roll that money down, because that's what all three methods have in common. But the two that are the most popular, that the financial pundits like to talk about, neither one of those worked for me. I had to find my own path. So to get back to what Kelsa was saying, a good financial coach doesn't tell you what to do. They help you find what works well for you, which will be different from person to person. These people who get on TV or on the internet or the radio or a podcast or whatever, because they're all over the place, and it's even in books, right? I've seen this kind of behavior in the printed book, where somebody comes to them for help, and what they get instead of help is they get shamed, they get screamed at, yelled at, they get belittled. That is not helpful, and it really gets my dander up. I don't get angry very easily. I'm just not that kind of person. but that makes me angry. And the more vulnerable someone is, the angrier I get when they get treated that way by the person that they've gone to for help. And I think the reason that that happens is because the people who get into the mass media say they have the answer. That is what they're peddling. It is the answer. They did it their way, and so that's going to work for every other person. What Joe Schmo did to get out of debt, to own 3 houses by the time he was 25, or whatever they did, and you can do it too. And when there's friction, when another person can't replicate what they did, that's where the screaming and the belittling and what have you, and the blaming, frankly, because the person who it wasn't successful for, they get told that it's their fault. Well, you didn't follow the program. Okay, well, maybe they did, and then they landed in the hospital, or they got in a car accident, or whatever the case may be. Something happened that didn't happen to the guru who is peddling the advice, and the person who's now calling for help. Okay, now this happened. What do I do? They get blamed for it, no matter what it is. And I probably don't have to say this, but I'm going to. It's just because it's so relevant to this particular type of situation. When someone's screaming at you, when they're getting shrill, when they're yelling, when they're using belittling language and talking over somebody, that's usually the sign that they don't have a leg to stand on. They are either without an answer, or it has been revealed that what they have done isn't going to work for everyone after all, that the magic solution doesn't work for most people. And so they have to put the other person down. They have to blame them, belittle them, scream at them, what have you, because if the guru can make that person feel stupid, and that person accepts that they're stupid or that they're less than or whatever, then that makes the guru look smarter. It reinforces the idea that they have the answer, and if it didn't go right for somebody, it's their fault. Because otherwise, the jig is up. It's game over. So in order to preserve their own prestige, their own standing, what have you, they will absolutely tear somebody else down. And, the guru's life goes on. But the person who is destroyed by it, it takes a long time to recover from that, if they ever do at all. Their confidence is shaken. They may consider just giving up, that, they're in whatever dire straits they're in, and that's just always the way it's going to be. And possibly even worse outcomes from that. I mean, it's happened. It has absolutely happened. So I don't put a lot of stock in those gurus and their methods. I think it's fine to look at those as guidelines or as case studies of, this is what happened to one person, so what can I learn from that, rather than I'm going to try to replicate exactly what they did, and if it doesn't work for me, well, maybe it's me, maybe I'm the problem. Even though the circumstances are going to be completely different. So not only are you starting from a different place, because you're never going to be in the exact same financial position as anybody else, every case is unique, but it's also a different time. Somebody who got into financial trouble in the 80s is going to have a different perspective on how they got out of it from somebody who got in trouble in the wake of the financial crisis. Times were different. The rules were different. And just to go back to a point that I've been making in previous episodes, I've been saying that one of the reasons people give for why they cannot manage their money, or why they don't manage their money well, is they lament the fact that they were not given financial education in high school. if this is somebody who's in their 40s, their 50s, their 60s, high school was a while ago. And the rules of finance were completely different then. I was in high school in the late 1990s. We didn't have apps. We didn't have the proliferation of credit cards like we do now. You couldn't really use your credit card at most places. I mean, I think you could barely use it at the gas station. People were still writing paper checks and getting them back in the mail with their bank statements every month because they were getting those in the mail. Um, so it was entirely different. And if you say, well, if only I'd been given that education then, what good would that do you today? None. You learn and you adapt with the world as the world changes. So if you didn't get that education, which I accept most people didn't, you kind of have to learn it on your own. So that was, again, the upshot of what I got out of Kelsey's talk. And I really hope she goes to FinCon again next year. I will be there, and I'm really hoping that she's there again because I want the opportunity to meet her in person and to thank her. So I'm not, this is not sponsored. I'm not saying to go out and use her services, but I would say if somebody needs that kind of assistance, if you need a financial coach, if you need somebody to walk through your specific situation with you, that would be a very good place to start. So I think her business right now is she's kind of the financial coach's coach. And that was kind of the thrust of her talk, was to talk to other financial coaches or people who are interested in becoming financial coaches about how she approaches clients, as opposed to talking to a room of prospective clients. But all that to say, she does have a coaching business, and she and her team use the Conative method to work with people. So probably a great place to start. So I apologize I didn't get too much into the Strive method this week. I will do that next week. I had intended to talk more about it this week, but just her talk, like I say, really sticks in my mind for the value that it provided and the insight, and like I say, life-changing. So next week, I will absolutely talk about Strive. I will talk about saving and spending and how I started with it, how I lined up all of my priorities, and used the Strive method to essentially get a handle on my finances in about a year. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take about a year. And it doesn't mean that if you're in debt, that you're debt free in a year. It doesn't mean if you are struggling with back taxes that you'll have that cleaned up in a year. But at least you'll be in a better position 1 year from now than you are when you start. So more on that next week. And thank you so much for spending the time with me today and for listening. And if you enjoyed the video, please leave it a thumbs up. Drop me a comment down below because I'd love to hear your thoughts. And until I see you in the next one, take care.